to Previously Prohibited, the number 32 podcast on New Zealand's news and politics charts. I am your host, Melissa Whitty, here with my co-host, Janine Yunez, and we are back for a second day in a row to talk about the ceasefire. Yay!
Yes. Extremely exciting news. So, it was like officially, the agreement was officially agreed to, executed, I guess you'd say, between Israel and Hamas.
Yeah, so agreed to, it will not go into place until Sunday night.
Which is extremely stressful because, as usually happens when Israel enters a ceasefire agreement, they go into overdrive and start bombing as many people as possible in order to accomplish their goal of killing civilians.
And crushing spirits and hopes and dreams and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be
everybody
a grim
hate us?
4 days. I know.
You know, we didn't do nothing.
It's just because they're Jewish.
Yeah, I know. That's it. That's the only thing, whatever. So we're back, but we've got some good things to talk about. And then we also wanted to highlight some things that are being said on the pro-Israel side of X. There's a lot of cope going on over there. People are really upset. They're angry. I can't even imagine what's going on Israel Telegram right now. I mean, they are probably just losing their minds. Yeah. So we wanted to bring up some things that people were talking about, some good things and some bad things. And I think I always like to start with the good. I thought it was really, really interesting was that Qatar, CARE, the Muslim organization here in the U.S., their spokesperson today said that Trump threatened Israel as well.
I mean, that seems to be what's all the reports are saying that his envoy, Witkoff, went to Israel. I forgot if we said this yesterday, but declined their offer to meet on Saturday instead of the Sabbath and said, no, we're meeting on the Sabbath. And apparently put a lot of pressure on them that the Biden administration never did. So got the deal that basically had been offered in May. And should we go a little bit into what the deal is or what the agreement is?
Right. So so it's 3 phases, I believe. 3 or 4 phases.
3 or 4. I think it's 4.
Okay, 4 phases. First phase is going to start on Sunday night, and it's going to be an exchange of 30 hostages from and I believe these are all the live hostages that are left. I think there's 100 total, but they believe that most of them are deceased and they're holding their bodies. So they're going to release the live ones. I believe it's 30. I think that's what they're saying right now. And in exchange, Israel is going to release several hundred people that they took captive in Gaza since the war began and have just been holding. So,
and as they often do, without any charges even. So these aren't necessarily people who've done anything. In some cases they have. I got in an argument on Twitter about that today because people were conflating by saying, you can't necessarily draw a conclusion about somebody by virtue of the fact they've been in an Israeli prison. Not the kind of conclusion we'd draw if they were in an American prison, because they can hold people without charges who really haven't done anything.
Right. Yeah, the concept of administrative detention is something that is just mostly unheard of in America. We literally cannot conceptualize it because we have constitutional rights that are protected. And, sometimes, yes, they do get violated, obviously, but we have court systems. We have, a system of accountability for that. Whereas Palestinians don't have any rights like that. They can literally be snatched off the streets and be held for years. The administrative detention, the rules technically are 6 months, but they can be extended under 3-month extensions indefinitely. So, and there have been many, I mean, when I say many, we're talking thousands of people who have been held for 9 months, a year, 18 months. It's nothing.
And
it's
this does
totally...
not of course, this doesn't apply to Jewish citizens of
Yep.
Israel or settlers in the West Bank.
Right. Yeah. Well, so
So,
I was actually surprised. Apparently, they did have an administrative detention for settlers. It was
huh,
almost never implemented,
yeah.
but when this new far right administration
Mhm.
took over in 2021, I guess going into 2022, that was one of the first things they did. They revoked it for settlers. So for the last several years, it's only been Palestinians that have been
Yeah.
subjected to this. Yeah.
Yeah, and they, I mean, that's what people mean when they say it's an apartheid state. It's always
Yeah.
the pro-Israel people always try to say, "Oh no, they're all, all these Palestinians living in Israel and they have equal rights." They don't, but
Yeah.
it's not as bad. I definitely acknowledge it's not nearly as bad. But when people are saying an apartheid state, I think they're mostly referring to the occupied territories in Gaza. But
Right.
anyway, so that's and Israel also agrees to withdraw from Gaza, right? Essentially, and
Mm-hmm.
withdraw from northern Gaza. They're not supposed to keep any land as a result of what happened, any land
Right.
that they didn't have at the beginning of this war. It seems like a pretty good deal for Palestinians, frankly. I
Mm-hmm.
think there is a lot of concern that Israel is not going to honor it, as they often haven't in the
Mm-hmm.
past.
Yep. And that's totally legitimate concern.
Uh,
Absolutely.
But,
Um,
well, I'm heartened by the fact that Trump put pressure on them to take the deal in the first place, that
mhm.
Biden wasn't willing to, because that also suggests maybe he won't accept them violating the deal. So
Right.
he might he might be willing to go back and say, no, this isn't
Yeah.
acceptable. We're not going to just turn the other way.
Right. Yeah. And I've long said it that Trump is just not the kind of person. He is not. If you had been calling him, genocide Don or whatnot, it would. He's just not going to handle it well. That's not his thing. I shared a clip earlier today from it was a 2007 interview
Yeah.
of him, and you can tell like he really is genuinely anti-war. Like you can feel it. Like he
Yes.
doesn't see it. Like he sees war as mostly pointless. This is a businessman who doesn't actually settle problems and conflicts with violence, right?
Yeah.
He sees and so I actually had never thought about the advantages of having a businessman for diplomacy
Yeah.
before I watched that video today, and it really kind of struck me that like this is a man that just doesn't see the point in violence. Like, why can't we just work it out?
Yeah.
You know?
I watched that clip actually, and I was just gonna bring it up when you did. So
Hmm.
I was struck by it, I have to say. Like
Hmm.
I obviously, didn't come into all of this being a huge Trump supporter, but he came across to me extremely empathetic. He was describing people being Iraqis who'd been
Hmm.
amputees in the war because of the war. And you could tell he was distraught by it. He was describing what it was like for them, and like in a kind of empathetic terms I've never seen from any of the major Democrat candidates like Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. And on the other side, this reporter wrote this pretty um, shocking thread about the way that the Biden administration had been acting about everything. I mean, all of it we knew kind of, but just the concerted efforts to cover up Israeli war crimes, to cover up our complicity, to cover up what they knew. Just a total lack of empathy on that side. And I like, honestly, it makes me so mad because I have so many of these like liberal relatives who just
Yeah.
blindly think like Biden is a good guy, Harris is a good guy because they say some nice words and they have a D after their name, and Trump is a terrible guy because sometimes he says some crass things. And it's so insane to me. It's so insane, especially now looking at what's happened.
I agree, and I think it really kind of drives home the point. The people like Max Blumenthal, Anya Parampil, Aaron Matei. We've seen all of these, these kind of left wing but vocal critics of Democrats is just how dangerous Democrats
Yeah.
really are because they are so good at wrapping atrocities in these kind of feel good platitudes, right? Like, I
Yeah.
see you, I hear you kind of crap
Yeah.
when the fact is that they are throwing the pictures of the dead children in the trash saying don't show
Right.
me this stuff.
Right. But they
And
put like a transgender person in charge of HHS, so
right,
it's all good.
right. We've got we've got the we've got the black female immigrant as the spokeswoman, and so you better shut up and be grateful for the representation that you have. Apparently, as if
Yeah.
apparently that's supposed to make it more palatable,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
unfortunately for some it does actually.
Yeah. As I'll
Yeah.
say, like, my journey to, basically wearing a MAGA hat. I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah.
I don't like baseball caps, but, I think I hated Trump. Like, I was just like a typical New York liberal in 2016. I cried when he won. I thought it was the end of the
Oh,
world. I was
no.
like, everything's terrible. I was, like, really, like, writing my will because I was like, everyone's gonna die because he's gonna start World War III. And then during COVID, I kind of shifted. I started to see the Democrats as really bad. And I would kind of,
Mhm.
my attitude was like, well, they're all really bad. I don't like Trump, but I don't like the Democrats
Right.
either. And like, maybe there's an argument that the Democrats are more dangerous than some of the neocon Republicans, because at least the
Mhm.
neocon Republicans are like upfront. But Trump is kind of a bad guy and he's corrupt and whatever. And then I've really come around to like, he says crass things. I don't love everything he's done.
Mhm. Yeah.
um, but for the most part, his policies have been pretty good. And I think he actually has genuine empathy that most politicians in Washington don't.
Right. Yeah. So in 2016, I was like hardcore Trumper, right?
So
Because
we were like on the other.
oh, we were like, oh, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here cracking up because it was so funny. Like, I worked in a law office, and the lawyer that I worked for, he was the first person who in 2015 when he came down the elevator, he said he's going to win, and
Yeah.
he loved him some Trump, boy, which is so funny. And I actually, being pretty politically savvy, having, a degree in political science, I was like, whatever, that guy's a joke. This is all. I didn't like it. I thought
Mhm.
it was crap. And then when he started really coming in on the anti war stuff and the, isolationist stuff, I was like, okay, you're kind of
Mhm.
talking my language. And then, he really, when he went after Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, saying they're going to get us into World War III, I'm going to bring all of our troops home. I was like, sold,
Yeah.
sold,
Yeah.
sold, do it. And so I was so happy. Everyone, it's so funny because I bartended like 2 nights a week, and all of the people that I worked for, they were all or worked with were all Democrats, and everyone the whole time they treated me like it was so cute that I was like, he's gonna win, he's gonna win,
Oh,
like it
that's
was
funny.
like, oh, it's so cute. And then when he won the next day, I went in, and you would have just thought someone had dropped a bomb. I
Yeah.
mean, my poor boss, she was so sweet. She couldn't even look at me. She was just so angry, and she went home early that day. But my big boss, the proprietor, he was hilarious because he was just like me. And when he saw me, he like picked me up and like swung me around. He was so excited, but we were the only ones.
That's so funny.
I know. So we were like total opposites. And then when he started bombing Syria in
Mm.
2017, I was like, oh, that SOB, I mean, they scaled it back a little bit, but I was disappointed. Definitely. I was very unrealistic. I
Yeah.
wanted it all. I wanted to shut all the bases down, bring them all home. This isn't our problem. Stop this. And I didn't have, realistic expectations. But at the end of the day, it wasn't bad. It was way better than anything Clinton
Uh,
would have done. I mean, Clinton would have just
yeah.
been, oh my gosh, she would have been so
Absolutely.
awful, you
She would
know?
have possibly been worse than Biden if that's even possible. I'm not sure.
Yeah, she's
Uh,
probably the only person I can think of that I do actually think that she would be worse than Biden. She's
yeah.
just that much more heartless, you
Well,
know?
I'm also hopeful that Trump, if I'm correct about his isolationist instincts and his dislike of war, I'm hoping that to the extent maybe he was a little bit hamstrung last time because he wanted to get
Yeah.
reelected again and he needed donors and that kind of thing, that now he'll be free to do whatever he wants. And, I do want to like leave some room that we're somehow being fooled. I don't think so. My gut doesn't tell me that. But,
Mhm.
you know, we haven't seen everything yet.
Right. So
So
the first thing that I saw was Mike Walls today was on with someone. It was definitely a Jewish guy. I can't remember. It was last name. I think was like Goldberg or something like that. But he's got the pin on. He's got the Israeli flag pin on and everything. So and this guy was like, you could tell he was upset. And something that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to bring this up to you, is they keep talking about, and Walls said, we're hardline. Hamas cannot be left to govern in Gaza, right? And
Mhm.
like, no, it's a no go for us. It's a no option. And I'm like, okay, fine. So why not? Why is no one saying, okay, well, you have to hold new elections?
Yeah.
Why is that just not an option? Why is that not like an automatic? You have to hold new elections.
Yeah.
They have to be UN um, monitored, um, and and then if I'm Hamas, why not just reform? Like the,
Mm.
you're not. I feel like you're not being realistic if the their brand is done too. It's not just Israel that's been tarnished. Like they're probably never going to be able to come back either. So why not rebrand?
Yeah.
I feel like people should talk about this a little bit more, and it's been weird to me that no one, especially on the diplomatic side of the U.S., like why is no one talking about we're going to hold new elections?
Well,
You know,
Netanyahu doesn't really want that,
well,
does
yeah,
he? He
nobody
wants
wants it,
Hamas to
right?
stay in power, so he has an excuse to keep killing.
Right. So I think what's a better move than to push for new elections? That is it, that's how he maintains his power
Yeah.
over Gaza, right?
Yeah.
So why not just rebrand and push for new elections? You would remove so much power from him there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird to me that it doesn't get brought up by anyone on either
Yeah.
side.
Well, I mean, with Biden, the United States was clearly just extremely weak and unwilling to do anything.
Right.
They were
Yeah.
effectively just acting as sort
They
of
were just puppets
agents for
for,
Israel. Yeah,
yeah.
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 But I mean, I suspect what happened with Trump was he didn't really have that much time. Like my guess is that he really wanted to get this deal and this agreement in effect by the time he takes office next week, and so he probably only had a couple of weeks to get it together, and he probably didn't want to throw in some new contingent that would have thrown a wrench in things.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I also think, my sister was asking me today about that, and I think he wanted a clean slate when he
Mm,
started, or when he gets sworn in. He didn't want any of that crap from Biden. Any of, he, and I don't blame him. I would have been the exact same way. I do not want to be tarnished by that.
yeah,
This absolute, it's a shit show. Sorry for the language. That they have created for the last 15 months, and I
yeah,
wouldn't want any part of it. So no, we're going to draw a nice clean line in the sand here, and my record going in is going to be fresh and unblemished,
yeah,
and
yeah,
we're not going to get tangled up with who did what when,
yeah, yeah. Well, it's very exciting. But before we get back into the people who are less than happy on Twitter, here's a reaction from somebody who was, a little bit happy.
I love this guy.
Oh wait, sorry, that's the wrong one.
No, that's the right one.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing, yeah. It's okay. So for the people who are listening, gotta admit, I was not expecting Trump to give me a Zionist meltdown to enjoy. Thank you, Mr. President.
I know. I was like, when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's so good. And I love it. There's a bunch of threads going around with like all of their best, like just total meltdowns. I'm trying not
Yeah,
to be like that because, of course, I'm, worried that something bad's, I don't want to, I feel like
yeah,
it's like counting your eggs before they hatch, or counting your chicks
that's
before they hatch
true.
kind of thing. But at the same time, I mean, it's funny to see a little bit of the hysterics, the meltdown.
So this is part of the meltdown.
Well, yeah, this is part of so there are people who are just like, distraught, sad, and then there are people who are taking their anger out in, wishes of just
just
sheer
insane.
debauchery.
I say the PAL prisoners be tagged like dogs with a chip. The chip would have a GPS and remote explosion device. And then someone says, like, they're responding seriously. That's really interesting regarding the chip, at least. That would be easy to do. Imagine how advanced Israel is on that tech. Could be the size of a couple molecules. And then she responds, yes, can you imagine? It might prevent them from doing harm to Jews again. All prisoners come in and get chipped deep inside their bodies so they can't easily remove it. Elon Musk tags Elon Musk Neuralink in action. Chip all the Hamas prisoners. Chip those jihadi motherfuckers. I mean, I
Just
don't even know. It's
insane.
yeah.
Like, I mean,
Just
it's weird. I'm looking at it, and it's like, just so they can't harm Jews again.
yeah.
You can't. It's always about them. They're the only victims. It's
Yeah.
this victim mentality that is just obscene
Yeah.
among Israel supporters. You don't see this much in the anti-Israel Jews. I feel like I've never seen any
No.
of them talk like that, but
No.
you know,
No.
but they never really seem to like see like, oh, Jews are being, it's just the Jews that are being targeted. It's just the Jews that are,
Yeah.
they never talk like that ever. I've never seen them, so it's very weird. And it really kind of, I think, plays into how uh they have to be the victim because then it justifies all the aggression,
Of
right?
course, yeah. It's very
And
important to maintain
right.
a narrative. And I was kind of a little bit reluctant at the beginning of all this to go into the anti-Semitism stuff because I just didn't want to get it. I really stuck with the like you can't just bomb civilians.
Right.
Kind of that was because of what some people did. You can't do collective punishment. But looking back, I kind of regret not taking more issue with it because I think the sort of incessant claims of anti-Semitism at the beginning, a lot of which weren't really based in truth, were based much more on the aggressive actions of some of the pro-Israel people, and then some of the pro-Palestine students would like not want them to enter their part of the campus or whatever. They were sort of misrepresented, and I think a lot of that was a distraction from what Israel was doing. It was kind of again used to create this narrative that Jews are not safe in America, that they need Israel, and so that justifies what Israel is doing. And it's hard to deal with this issue because you get called an anti-Semite, and none of us want to be called that.
Right, and it's super effective to shut you down. And you see
Yes.
that like when you let them get away with it on a little bit, I for me, I got caught. I don't know. I think I just being one of those early Trump supporters, you just get so used to being called everything: a homophobe, a racist, xenophobe, a grandma killer during COVID. So again, I'm like, I mean, I have just, rhino skin when it comes to stuff like that. So it was like, good luck trying to silence me with some anti-Semitism crap. I'm so just hardened to all of it. I could not care less what you call me. But very early on, I thought it was just so ridiculous the way that people were letting them get away with framing from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, as a call to genocide. It was just so patently obscene, like just so stupid on its face that I was like, this is ridiculous. I've never seen it. And I couldn't believe the way that so many people like gave credence to that, right? Which I always thought was really telling. Like, you mean the only way for Palestinians to, have, freedom and equality is a genocide? Like you all are literally just not going to ever let that happen,
like, that's actually that's a really good point, that implicit admission,
right?
And
now it's gotten so bad to where we went from from that, which was already just ridiculous, to just simply seeing someone wearing a keffiyeh is an expression of Jew hate. Okay. And we saw this, that's the newest, it's not new. I know they've been saying it for a while now, but that anti-Semitism page. I mean, we're talking about, they're just like snapping pictures of people randomly on the street, doing their jobs, and they've got a keffiyeh
imagine
on.
If I started complaining about people wearing Star of Davids and saying I felt like it was anti-Palestinian.
Right. Yeah.
It's completely ridiculous.
You've got, I mean, or what, the kippah, right? Is it kippah?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I see that, and I just, I think that you're gonna try to bomb me. I mean, it's because again, this is just a religious garment. It's that's a religious garment. The keffiyeh is even kind of more broad in that it's just worn widely across the Middle East.
It's come to be adopted, I'd say, in the West as like a symbol of solidarity with Palestinians.
Right.
I mean, that's a reasonable, I think a reasonable inference when you see like a white person wearing one. Not
definitely. Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with that. You're allowed to show solidarity with people who are being genocided.
Right, definitely. I have a watermelon sweatshirt. I wear it all the time. I've never had anybody say anything to me. I've always wished that somebody would. during
So,
COVID, I was like begging for someone because I never wore a mask. I was like vehemently anti-mask, and I
yeah,
always just
I
had
never
my
did it. Yeah,
I
I
always had
had
my
to
resting bitch
sometimes, but
face on, like I dare
yeah.
you, and no one ever did. No one ever said anything to me.
I got in so many arguments. One time I wasn't wearing one at the gym. This was like 2022, and a guy complained to management. He was wearing like a whole thing, and I was just like, I was furious. I was like, I swore at him. It was very,
2022?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my
DC and New
gosh.
York were so crazy. I got yelled at all the time, like planes, trains.
Oh my
uh,
goodness. I was like
yeah.
begging for someone to do something like that to me. And no, it was so funny.
Oh,
Like
I wish I
everyone,
could have switched. It
yeah.
happened to me all the time. Like,
No, it was always, I always said it was always me and the black guys. We would be the
that's
only ones, everybody else would be wearing them. But in the South, all the black guys were like, yeah, we're not wearing that shit. And then it would be like me. And then like some random like white dude, and that was it. Everybody else was just, dutifully complying.
I
And
actually remember early on in 2020, there was, I was on the train. I was going to a friend's in New Jersey, and there was an African American gentleman who he like didn't have his mask on for a second. Like I think he took it off to eat something or drink something, and everyone was so nutty then in that area that a woman freaked out, complained to the conductor. They stopped the train for like half an hour. The conductor was trying to get him to go off the train, and he was like, "I'm picking my kid up from school. Like, please don't make me get off the train. Otherwise, my kid's gonna have to wait there."
oh
They
my
wouldn't. He wouldn't get off. They wouldn't stop, and he was being very polite. By the way, they were being very aggressive. They called the police. So this train was like an hour late because. It's like ridiculous because this guy had taken his mask down to have a sip of water. Like, this is how hysterical it was in the New York area in 2020.
That is so. It's
It
so
was,
hard for me to imagine. That I live in a blue county. I live in Cumberland County,
mm,
and it's like slightly blue. So our kids had to wear masks. Um,
yeah,
and I was like not a good sport about any of it. I mean, I was not a good COVID person. Like day one, I was like,
oh, me
I'm done
neither.
with this shit. All right, I'm done.
Well,
Day
it
one.
was obvious to me it made no sense because like
Right. Yeah.
you can't shut society down. You're just putting the burden of everything onto the working class. Well, the
Right.
laptop class stays home and like, gets their takeout delivered by the working class people who like have to go to
Yeah.
work and prepare the meal
Oh, I
and bring it to
know.
you.
I have a I
So,
have a neighbor who used to she would leave all of her groceries out on the front porch, and I just always remember just kind of being disgusted watching the groceries get delivered, and then they had like special instructions and they had to put them on the front porch, and then they would be out there, and I was like, they're going to be out there for hours. Like this is so weird. Like everything about this is stupid. It's stupid. It's patently stupid. Okay.
yeah.
Just I don't know. I could go on still. I've always said that in a couple years, there's going to be like a real market for therapy for people who still
Right.
have COVID anger
Oh
issues.
yeah. Oh,
You
for
know?
sure. Also the people who still have like COVID fear issues because there are lots of people on the
Yeah.
DC Metro still wearing N95. So
Yeah.
it's
No,
crazy.
no. I said like, I would never wear them unless it was like, I mean, I never wanted to make anybody's life miserable. Like if it was their job, I'm not trying to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
be a
yeah. Oh
jerk or
yeah, yeah.
whatnot. Most of the time I would just not go into the store. Like if that was your
Yeah.
thing, then I'm just not going to go. But,
Yeah.
I had to. And then, once it got lifted, it was like, middle of 2021 where like I never ever had to wear,
Yeah.
them again. And I just
Yeah.
swore. And when they tried to talk about doing it again, I was like, I will never. And I
Yeah.
actually will be. I will be rude. I'm not going to inconvenience myself anymore over this. This is ridiculous. But
Yeah.
luckily, never. And I don't think it would ever actually come back. But
Yeah.
when I say come
I
back,
don't either.
I mean the
Yeah.
things. But
Well, let's
anyways,
pray.
way off
But
topic.
yeah,
But
nevertheless, it was an interesting tangent. I don't think we've talked that
yeah.
much about COVID. So, but speaking of crazy people, so there's this guy on Twitter I think is worth talking about, even though I like try not to pay too
Yes.
much attention to everybody on Twitter. But,
Well, yeah, because
but
it's
this,
not
it's not
it's not
about Twitter. It's about,
well, it's not even about him. It's
influencer. Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
so we're talking about this guy. His name is Max Norddahl, and just so for people who don't know, Max Norddahl was a Zionist philosopher. from the early, I believe it's 20th century. I think it was the 1900s. He's the one who comes up with it. We came up with the idea of the masculine Jew, which to me is kind of just a really crazy philosophy around basically seeing Jews, prior to this guy's philosophy as being weak and submissive and always going along with like the pogroms and then of course like the Holocaust and everything. And so the idea behind Zionism and these muscular Jews where they weren't going to be the weak Jews anymore, they weren't going to get
like
bullied.
Weird victim blaming too.
Right, it is. It's really bizarre. Like, and you'll hear some of them like say, "You're not going to herd us onto the cattle cars. We'll never be those weak Jews again. We're never going to lay down and take it again," which is like absurd because clearly it's like you don't even know your own history. Actually, there was some pretty strong rebellions led by Jews. I don't know what to tell you. I would think that you would take pride in that, but whatever. And so that to me kind of like gives you an insight into this person's just the fact that he would choose to name his account after this guy. And so
and anyways, he has as his profile picture, I think it's important to mention, the Family Guy. What's his name?
I don't know anything about the Family Guy. Okay. I've seen like 2 episodes of it, and so I don't know anything about like what that says about the
Peter Griffin. I think Peter Griffin, and then they have a dog named Brian. The family. So that's his profile picture.
Oh, isn't that one? And then people think that he is
this guy, Brian Griffin, who's DeSantis' comms director.
Right. So he's Ron DeSantis' comms director, Brian Griffin. Somebody did like a deep dive, and I think it was actually The Nation that did it. On this guy.
Yeah. So they thought like obviously the idea is that the profile picture is kind of a he's a subtle hint. And then someone did like voice analysis from Twitter Spaces or something and claims there's pretty conclusive proof that it's him.
Right. But so what we were looking at today is that this guy, and if you're on Twitter and you haven't blocked him, you will know that this account is a mega troll, right? He's always on Janine's posts. He's always on. I have him muted, so it's so funny. Sometimes
I have him muted too, but the mute function doesn't work very well for me. Like I constantly see posts I muted, and then I'm like tempted to reply.
Yeah, it's so funny because he shows up, and I know when he's like on my thing because it'll be like mute, and then somebody's replied, and then mute, And I'm like, well, I know who this one is, and I mean, I've got hundreds of people muted, that's always my thing.
Too. Yeah, but
I looked at it the other day. It was like
if it's on one of our posts, it's him.
Yeah. Yeah. So this guy comes on the post right away, right? Like, I mean, we are talking within today. When I actually tweeted about him, it was like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And for somebody that doesn't follow you, what that should tell you is that they're following you with another account that is getting notifications, right? Because your account would not even, at 7 minutes, it's got about 700 or 800 views. It's not even hit the algorithm yet. It's not even going to be in the For You feed, So that definitely tells me right there that he's got a spotter. So right there, that implies an operation, right? That's some kind of op. And then when we went on Social Blade and we started looking, well, I say we, it was me and someone else talking about it. And this guy is tweeting anywhere from 300 to 700 times a day. Okay. And some of them are retweets. A lot of them are retweets, but it's not half of them. And so you're thinking, if somebody did this as their full-time job, 10 hours a day at, we'll say 300 tweets. I mean, that's still 30. It's one tweet every 2 minutes. That's insane.
Yeah.
So what that also tells me is that this is probably someone who is, it's probably a network that it has multiple people logged into the account on different and they're all responding. And I did think before, because if you've ever gotten into it with him, he's extremely fast, right? Like wicked fast, like to the point where it's like, you're not even thinking, but if you've got 2 or 3 people responding to it, and they're all on the same page kind of thing, yeah, actually they can do it that fast.
Yeah, and so I got into it with him today, which I usually try not to, but he's been hounding me because I approved of Carroll's post. I said best Twitter post of all time. So he's been coming after me and asking if I think Israel killed JFK and whatever did 9/11. Just keeps hounding me, and I won't give him an answer
Right.
because I know he's going to twist it. So
Right.
you know, um, I started asking him if he was using his government office or resources in order to conduct an influence operation on behalf of a foreign government, and he started getting pretty defensive. Said you're like a free speech lawyer, and he's saying I can't say these things. And I was like, if this is your personal account, fine. Like I obviously defend your right to say that. But no, government officials don't actually have free speech
Right.
rights, like First Amendment free speech rights as government officials. You can't use the weight, authority, resources that taxpayers are giving you
Right.
in order to just do whatever you want. It came up in my Supreme Court case in the context of censorship, where the government officials were arguing like we have the right to threaten people to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get them to censor speech. And
Yeah.
like likewise, if I think there's an argument that if you're conducting business on behalf of a foreign government and conducting
Oh
an
yeah.
influence operation, you don't have a right to do that either. And it's also, at the very least, it's extremely unseemly that DeSantis has his staff, appears to be conducting some kind of influence operation on
Right.
behalf of Israel
Right.
through a sock puppet account.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so we know that it's multiple people, running some kind of network, whether it maybe is just one person responding, but they have spotters out there. I highly doubt that it's just one person responding, though.
The
I'm
only
sure
okay,
it's
the only
multiples.
argument I agree, given the number of tweets, because I mean he was responding to me instantly. He's
Yeah,
responding to you, so many people. So that seems unlikely. But the only argument against it is the tone is very uniform. Like, I mean, it might
yeah.
just be that they've managed to get it down. Like, you know,
Yeah.
so
Well, I mean, I look at, I mean, it's not smart. It's not smart commentary.
no,
It's
no,
it's you, and it's very simplistic. It's like last night. You are a Jew hater. He calls me the village idiot. I mean,
yeah,
it's really like kind of like boomer humor kind of
yeah,
thing, like lame. Oh, village idiot. You're a Jew hater. I mean, this is stuff that
yeah,
like 50-year-old
yeah.
dudes are like saying, like, and they think they're so
Yeah.
funny. It's lame. And
Well, I think that as I was saying to you a little earlier, I think there's also an attempt to like get at you emotionally. So I had posted a couple of
right.
weeks ago about how I no longer got like, as an example of the influence that Israel has on our country, that I prior to October 7th, I was constantly invited on conservative media, Fox News, etc. And I, am very rarely, if ever, asked back. I think I've been on like once or twice when the bookers didn't know who I was or hadn't looked at my Twitter account. And I wasn't saying like, oh my God, my career is over, my life is over. I was
Right.
just like, this is an example of uh, the fact that really you're not allowed to criticize this foreign country.
Right.
And this account brought that up today and said, tried to use it, I think, as like thought he was like a gut punch. Like, what a fall from grace you've had, Janine. You used to be on TV all the time, and now you never get invited back because, you're whatever, pro Palestine or whatever, pro Hamas. And like, I mean, honestly, like, going on cable news is one of the dumbest things in my life. I had my son a year ago. Like, it's been the most amazing year ever. I spend zero time wishing I was like getting cable news invites, but
Yeah.
I think this person or account thought that this was like gonna hurt me and so get an emotional reaction out of me. And I think they're doing a little bit of that. Like,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's stupid. I mean, yeah, it's
yeah.
cool if you can get on cable news, but the idea that this is some kind of fall from grace, it's like, the idea that you would put that as, being a pinnacle of grace in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
Yes.
It's
It's
like,
embarrassing,
you
really.
do realize the people that they invite on Fox
Yeah.
News, right? Like
Yeah.
you've seen, I mean, they have actual porn stars that they invite on there. So it's it's a wide range. Yeah, there's some pretty high ranking officials and whatnot, but give me a break. And
Yeah.
again, it's like you're standing on your principles. You are, um again, I mean, just is there any more graceful or, point of integrity that you can do to stand against genocide. I doubt it,
I know,
you know?
exactly. Like, and I'll, when I didn't say anything, I didn't speak out very vociferously for a while because I was so
Mhm.
afraid of the consequences. I was really afraid of getting fired. That's the big one. Because I can't, I can't lose the income, and
Right,
I
yeah,
like my
yeah.
job. So I wasn't, but at some point I like looked at my son and I was just like, one day he's gonna look at me when he's older and say like, Mom, why didn't you say something? Like,
Mhm.
you had a platform, this is like the horrible thing that was being done. And I like, how am I gonna live with myself?
Right.
And I'll be able to say I did the right thing.
Oh, yeah,
We might be
definitely.
living in,
Oh, I know.
a shack eating ramen noodles, but
I know, but I know. Everybody knows. I'm telling you, I see it every single day. I tell people all the time, being on the right, being conservative, being super outspoken and, having some pretty controversial views as far as like, right wing goes.
yeah.
And the number of people every single day, like normal people who would never have spoke out. Yeah, they're not saying anything, but I know I've said this before, but they're liking my posts. They're sending me
Yeah.
messages saying, please keep speaking out, or thank you. You opened my eyes to a lot of things. These are people that never would have ever
Yeah.
said anything. And no, maybe they're not being super vocal now, but we're giving them courage. I got the sweetest compliment ever today from
Oh,
someone who follows me, and they said, it was so great. He said, um, you have the courage of 1,000 men. It was so
aw,
sweet. It was like,
that's so
I,
sweet.
I know, it was like, oh, that's like the best um reply or compliment I think I've
Compliment,
ever gotten
yeah.
on Twitter. It was so
Yeah.
kind. And what did he say? I'm gonna bring it up because
Yeah.
he says, Mel, you spoke up for the weak and for injustice 450 days straight. My eternal respect. A woman worth 1,000 men in courage.
That's
I was like,
amazing.
I know. I was like, oh my God, that's the
Yeah.
best ever.
Well, I agree. But it's not worth anything because you're not on Fox News.
Oh, right? uh,
Just kidding. All
but
right.
yeah. So we will
Well,
talk to you
good
guys
news.
later. Yes.
Hopefully, when we come back, the news will still be good. And
Yes, and we will keep you updated. Yep. Okay.
bye.
Bye.